Mark, thanks so much for hopping on the Next Level Minds podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, man, it was cool to catch up with you, get to know you a little bit on the phone like last week. I like that we talked last week, had the podcast this week. Sometimes I'll do like those prep calls, like I call it, and then like 2 months later I'll have the podcast and I'll be like, wait, what the heck did I talk to this guy about? So I'm glad we're here, honestly.
Yeah, I appreciate the quick turnaround as well.
Yep, absolutely. So has your week been all right for you so far?
Doing well, getting the things done I need to get done. Life is always busy. I've always got a longer list than time to do it, but that's okay. It makes it go by fast.
Yeah. Are you a big like kind of time management list guy where you're like checking them off or like how do you kind of keep track of all that? Because I know you got a lot going on, of course.
Yeah, for me, it's a calendar because I'm super busy with what I'm doing with life mastery as well as family, vocation, and all the other stuff. I need to have it all on a calendar so I don't miss anything, so I don't miss out on great conversations like people with you. But yeah, so it's straight calendar and visit it, first of the day, end of the day to make sure I'm ready for the next day. So yeah, the best I could do. I'm no genius at it, but it keeps me going and keeps me on time.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what I would do without like the notification reminders like 30 minutes before a meeting. I feel like I would just miss so much stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That is a blessing.
Man, well, let me ask you this because I think this will unpack a lot of stuff about, your background and things of that nature. But I know you talk a lot about just in your content and your course, your book, and how you're helping people about just overcoming imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear kind of from your perspective, maybe how you've experienced that, how you've overcame it, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. Thanks for asking. For me, imposter syndrome is something that I had growing up. I have the course Life Mastery and the book Life Mastery Living Life by Design. And what I tell people in those and how I help to coach and mentor people is letting them understand that what I foresee and the things that I notice in life is that you're either living from your identity, who you're created to be, or you're living from what your life told you you are. And so, if you want to talk about imposter syndrome in my life, well, that was my life as a young man being told that, I wasn't good enough, whether it was struggling in school and, almost being passed over for a grade and having that kind of give me an imprint that said, you're not as smart as everybody else. Or, the other part is having a father who was, a great provider, but a dominant, personality in our household and somebody I felt like I never measured up to.
Mm.
So you think of that young man right there, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, struggling with school and trying to measure up to your dad. You always feel like you're disappointing. And then you grow up and you kind of take that on as an identity. At least that's what I did. And I say I because, it's my own story, but it's the same story I see with a lot of the men specifically, but also women that I work with is this understanding that what my past has been is what my future is going to be. And I'm just trying to manage it or overcome it. So imposter syndrome for me was that place of feeling like you weren't measuring up. So whether it was in a job and trying to go for that promotion or even get that job right and trying to figure out, are they going to pick me? Maybe not, and all those doubts and thoughts that get in your head or in business as I was succeeding in business and finding that fear of failure, that imposter syndrome just came along for the ride. I thought, Chris, when I became successful in business, we had a thriving business. We were able to sell it for a mid 6 figure profit. You think that at that point you feel like you have it all together. But the truth of the matter is, apart from understanding who I am, my life tells me who I am, and it doesn't matter success or failure. Come to find out, Chris, with a lot of the guys and ladies I work with, but specifically some guys that come to mind, they're high level achievers, amazingly successful, but that imposter syndrome carries on in their life until they can get to a place of understanding, hey, I'm living from my past, not living from who I was created to be. And when we can start to unpack some tools and strategies to get there, well, now they can start to see that man show up in their life.
Man, that's really cool. I like that you mentioned just operating from a different lens, right? Like so many people are operating
Yeah.
from their past, whether it's childhood things that have happened to them or just past circumstances that they've had in their life. So, how can people kind of begin having a different frame of reference? Like, I assume you don't just wake up and you're like, all right, I'm doing this now, right? I assume it's kind
Yeah.
of some milestones, some timelines, some steps attached to it. So, how do you usually go from like, living from the past to the better life that you've kind of alluded to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, if I was to give it an overall theme, I would use the title of my book.
Mm,
It's called Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, Not by Default.
yeah.
What I find in my own life and the life of the people that I work with, frankly, to be totally honest, Chris, everybody I know apart from it, instituting something like a life mastery in their life, or living the same way, which means this life happens and I respond.
Mm.
So whatever my past is, whatever my pains, my hurts, and all of that, right? You're supposed to get over it. You're supposed to move past it. You're just supposed to move on. But the truth of the matter is, nobody ever does.
Mm.
Whatever level of success you have, whatever things you're doing and accomplishing in your life, you don't overcome your past by ignoring it, but by speaking truth into it. And so for me, it's that first off, that understanding that you can actually have a different life. A lot of the things that I did early on in my life to try and change myself, to try and, you know, see the man on the inside become the man on the outside, that guy that I was hoping I could be, showing up in relationship and business, in life, the person of confidence and assurance, not the person of doubt and fear and worry. Well, I would use personal development to do that. And I had learned a lot from a lot of personal development programs. Not that any of them are wrong or right or anywhere in between, but the challenge is they offer change, not transformation.
Mm.
And for the people I work with, it really comes down to a transformation. It doesn't come down to me having habits to keep my fear and worry at bay. It's being able to have a transformation so that guy, that woman on the inside is actually unlocked into their life. And you're right, it starts first and foremost with us. It's with that revelation of there can be different. Anger and fear and worry, insecurity, imposter syndrome aren't things to manage. They're things to be victorious over. And the more you understand who you're created to be, the less they can have an influence on your life. So for us, it all starts with identity. The foundation of everything we do starts with identity, because the challenge is, Chris, apart from knowing who I am, my world has to make up the difference.
Mm.
Whether it's in relationship and I'm dealing with insecurity, well, my wife has to be perfect, because if not, it triggers those things on the inside that feels like I'm not good enough. In business, things have to keep rolling, right? The income has to keep increasing and things have to keep going on and up and up, an upward trajectory. Because if they don't, now all of a sudden this feeling of failure comes in, this imposter syndrome of, man, I don't think I'm even cut out for this, right? Those thoughts that you have in your head. But it all comes down to an identity statement. Who are you created to be apart from your things? The more the people I work with know who they are, the more they work from a place of being the victor in the process, not the victim. And so for us, it starts with identity, which means for us, it starts with an I am statement. One of the very first things I do is tell them to write an I am statement. And what that is, it's you apart from your things, your title, your role, your position, your power, your income. Take all of that stuff, set it aside. Who is this person on the inside? The character of who you are is what matters more than the accomplishments that you've had. And so we start to unpack it with that and a couple of other tools that we can get into, but it all starts with identity. Apart from identity, you're just playing a role. And you can do it for a long time. The problem is, I don't want to do something that is just exhausting because I never can overcome it. I just got to manage it.
Yeah, man. A couple of things that you mentioned there that I want to unpack. I like that you mentioned just the word transformation, just because that really just shows the impactfulness of it and really what you have to do. And I
Yeah.
also like that you mentioned who you are outside of different things, right? So, because things could go good or bad, and like you're gonna have the same
Yeah.
character, you're gonna be the same I am statement, regardless of if close the six-figure deal or you
Yeah.
didn't close the six-figure deal, right? And I think that's just such a good anchor point, because I see this a lot of times in business where like, um, these people have multiple different personalities. Like when things are going really well, they act this way. When things are going really bad, they act this way. When they're stressed, they act
Yeah.
this way, right? But what I'm getting at is I think you're trying to show people that like regardless of what happens, you're kind of unshakable. You're this I am statement regardless of external things. Is that kind of what I'm getting at there?
Yeah. And I love the word that you're using, unshakable, because that's exactly the goal.
Mm.
It's you being unshakable no matter what the circumstance. It doesn't mean challenge don't happen, because the truth, Chris, you know that as well as I do. Struggles happen, challenges happen, right? Everybody's living a life, and in that life, there's going to have issues and challenges. So it's not that they won't happen. It's not that I have mantras that make it so nothing really matters, right? It's none of that less than productive stuff. I'll just put it that way. But what it is the more I understand who I am, the more I understand I'm the answer to the circumstance I'm walking into. So, like you said, I mean, the normal circumstance, right? Life by default is when things are going well, I'm happy. And, I understand that, because when challenge happens, when you're close to bankruptcy, like I've been, right? Before the business was successful, it wasn't. And there's those struggling years of payroll going up and down and income going up and down, and you hope they go up and down at the same level. But and sometimes there's one of those where it doesn't, where you have to make tough financial choices, or you see that down the road, right around the corner could be something that's horrible. I'm not saying that challenges don't come in people's life, but the thing is being able to be unshakable in all of them, because it's the you showing up. What the people I work with don't always realize is that you're the answer to what you're walking into. We're trying to be quick to find an answer. We don't realize that we're the answer. Many times the people I work with at any level of success think that they're the question. I'm the question going, can I handle it? Can I succeed? Can I get the answer? Can I overcome whatever the question is that you have in your mind? And so you're right. It's that unshakable character of, no, I am the answer. I've succeeded before. And, again, we have other tools to help unpack that, but you have a track record of success in your life. And this is just one more step towards the next level of success you're going into. When you're unshakable, your circumstance won't change.
Yeah, and is the answer inside of you because of the confidence and all that stuff that you've been able to build, and you're kind of extracting that when certain things do come up? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just complete the circle, the three
For
items
sure.
that we use, the three strategies we have. So the first one is an I am statement, who you created to be. And that's usually the toughest one,
Yep.
because at least the people I work with, and myself included, I'm not used to looking at myself outside of my accomplishments,
Hmm.
right? We look at our success and failures to determine our identity. The problem with that is, like you said, our mood changes, our emotions change depending on what's going on in life. It's the default. It's nobody's fault that they do it. It's the standard way of living for multimillionaires and stay-at-home moms and everybody in between, the people I've worked with. But there's a difference, and that difference starts with that I am statement, who you created to be. Write that down, the character of the person inside. I'm a person of integrity and worth. I'm a person of value and passion. I'm a person that's easily emotional, but confidently assured of who I am in all circumstances, right? Whatever the thing is that you say is your statement, and it'll develop over time. Who I said I was a year ago is unpacked in a different way today. But there's two other steps to that. And the second one is a celebration list. And this one may throw you off a little bit, Chris. It's not a celebration of what I've done, it's celebration of who I am.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, I can't speak for women, although I work with them, but I know as a man, it's so much easier for me to see the things I've done wrong than the ones I've done right.
Hmm.
Even in accomplishing things, I don't know if you've been there, Chris, but I've been there where I'll accomplish whatever the thing is. And the first thing I think of is, oh, but I could have done that better. Oh,
Yeah.
but if I would have made that turn or made that decision, right? It's this thing where we're trying to find fault in ourselves, thinking that that's making us better. The truth of the matter is, if I can celebrate who I'm created to be, now all of a sudden that person of confidence and assurance is walking in the room. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. What it does mean is I'm worth celebrating.
Hmm.
If I can't celebrate me, then why should I expect it from anybody else? And if I can't celebrate me, how can I receive it from anybody else? So,
Yep.
those guys or women that you work with are the people that who can't receive a pat on the back. They can't take a compliment. They can't take an attaboy or an attagirl in their life. The problem is you can't celebrate you, so nobody else can either. So, second one is a celebration list. What do you celebrate about you? I love the fact that I love chocolate. I love the fact that I laugh at dorky things. I love the fact that I'm an animal lover, that I can't watch those mushy, emotional movies without getting, teary eyed in my life. I love the fact that I love those movies where people overcome and they succeed, right? There's those attributes about yourself that you love. I love my character. I love my worth. I love my value. I love my humor. I love my intellect. And then the third step is your accomplishment list. And this is the things that you've done. But what I tell people is write down your top 20.
Hmm.
I've written 100.
Nice.
And when I got to 100 to 110, 112, it started to be things like I graduated from junior high. I've owned 10 vehicles in my life. I pay my bills on time every month, right? Those what we call simple, ordinary things. But what the purpose of the exercise is, even people at a multi-million-dollar level, a lot of times we won't celebrate ourselves and celebrate what we've done until this is a year of Olympics, until we've gotten that Olympic gold medal.
Hmm.
But what we don't realize is the high achievers in the world, including Olympic athletes, Super Bowl champions, World Cup winners, will celebrate themselves along the way. They'll acknowledge their accomplishments leading up to their great success. If you can't acknowledge yourself along the way, most cases you're not going to get the big success, because you'll burn out before you get there, because it's not worth the sacrifice if I can't see increase in benefit. But the other part of it is I show them that you've got a track record of accomplishment in your life. So when you're walking into that boardroom and you don't know if you're going to be able to convince them for the endeavor that you want them to put their money into, or you're going to that bank trying to get a loan, or even in relationship, you're going out on that date, asking that girl to be your wife or that man to be your husband, or whatever it is, right? There's these thoughts in our head that say, I'm going to blow it. This isn't going to work. But the truth of the matter is, you walk throughout your day with a record of accomplishment in your life. You don't recognize it because you think it's ordinary, but it's not ordinary because everybody doesn't do it. But at the end of the day, if I can first off understand who I am statement, celebrate myself. If I can't celebrate me, then I can't receive it from anyone else. And accomplishment, see that I have a track record of success. Not that I'm perfect. There's nobody of great success that's been perfect, but they are incrementally better on the daily basis. They're willing to look at their accomplishments, see that they've got a track record of success, and believe that their past in that sense is going to be their future. I'm a person of accomplishment waiting to happen. When they start to understand that, then whatever level of success, whatever thing they're walking into, they can do it honestly and openly. And the truth of the matter is that guy shows up.
Mm.
Instead of the person of fear and worry and hesitant and putting up walls and hesitating on decisions, this person of confidence walks in because you know exactly who you are, and you know that because of who you are, you've got the answers for what you need.
Yeah, I love that three-pronged approach there. And you definitely threw me for a loop when you were talking about like celebrating you. I thought you were about to say celebrating wins, but that's more of that third one, right? But I like that because like everyone is different, right? You like different shows and TV and food probably than I do, right? Um, and I think that goes back to the kind of that inner identity when you can celebrate like who you are as an individual. And I like the accomplishment approach. And do you suggest people keep that like in a notes folder on their phone or
Yeah, absolutely.
visualize it or like what's the next step there, you know?
Great question, Chris. So that is our foundation. So that's where we start with. I've started in the course in my book, Life Mastery: Living Life by Design. That's the foundation for everything we do, because from there now I can walk into the things I need to do to transform myself, not change.
Hmm.
Like I said before, a lot of the personal development programs, again, they brought value to my life. So I'm not saying they didn't. The problem was there was a change that took place. And the change was I'm supposed to shoot for this person, this perfect picture of who you are.
Yeah.
Or in most cases, really, it's the person, the man or woman who's written the book, who's got the course, they're amazing. And if I do what they do, then I can be amazing like they are. Well,
Right.
it never worked for me because at the end of the day, I knew I wasn't them. So you could call it self-sabotage or, intellectual honesty. It was the truth that I'm not you and I'll never be you. But I don't have to. And this is the thing I try and get into people I work with to realize: you don't have to be like somebody else. Nobody's asking you to be an imitation, because at the end of the day, you and I know people who are amazingly successful at one thing, and then the rest of their life is a disaster
Mm.
because they're looking for that accomplishment to make up for an identity they didn't have. So while we have that strategy, what I really call the weapons of identity, right? Your I am statement, your celebration, and your accomplishment. The next one is our three-step transformational strategy, which is mastering your thoughts, words, and actions.
Mm.
Nothing happens in life, no accomplishment happens, no change or transformation happens apart from your mastering your thoughts, words, and actions.
Mm.
And for us, it starts with thoughts. And I can't really unpack all of them on our
Yeah.
quick program, but I'll start with the first one: mastering your thoughts. Who you think you are, you'll become.
Yep.
Science shows it, philosophy says it, but the truth of the matter is the things I say about myself will actually come to pass in my life. If I think I'm a failure, I'll make decisions, find avenues and areas and ways so that I can show that I'm a failure. If I think that I'm not worth loving, then believe it or not, I'll get into relationships with people that'll be dysfunctional to begin with, so that it crashes and burns, so that now that breakup in that relationship that didn't work out proves what I've already told myself. The challenge for most of us is, again, if you don't live from identity, who you are, you'll live from what your past has told you.
Mm.
And it's not bad to have a past and have hurts and wounds and issues. We're not saying don't acknowledge them, don't be healed of them. But what we are inviting people to do is to not let them tell you who you are anymore.
Yeah.
And so how do you transform that? Well, I'm a person that's older in my life, but Chris, if I was a 40-year-old man, you take out the first 5 years of my life, right, where you're developing and growing and figuring out the world. That means I've had 35 years of telling myself who I am, of
Mm.
using my experiences, my past successes and failures, of saying, this is the box that I can live in and I can't go any farther. We don't know that, but we just make decisions and directions and have thoughts that prove that. So what we do with mastering your thoughts is, well, First off, what do you tell yourself? If it doesn't align with who you believe you are, I am statement, celebration list, accomplishment list, then it's lying to you.
Hmm.
And again, life by default is, oh, I just had that thought again. Oh, why am I thinking like that? Right? It's the normal process of not understanding. You can actually master your thoughts. You can actually discard the ones you don't want to have and invest in the ones you do. And so we've already given you weapons to overcome negative thoughts by giving you positive input. And now it's a consistently going after it, right? I tell them every morning and every night, remind yourself of who you are. At the end of the night, celebrate who you've been and remind yourself of who you are again. The more you repetitively remind yourself of who you are, the more you start to see that man or that woman start to show up. You'll notice your decisions are different. You'll notice your outlook is different. You notice your emotions rather than worry about anxiousness and fear and all these things. You know, when something stressful is happening, now all of a sudden there's this calm and this assurance. There's this quick decision making instead of hesitation because now the person you believe you are is showing up. It takes time. It's a transformational journey. It's not a moment.
Mm.
There are moments of celebration in it, but it really starts with understanding mastering my life, right? Life by design means that I'm investing in my life to overcome the lies that I've believed, feeding them, destroying them with the truth that I know. And the truth starts with us, again, with identity. Who do you say you are? That's who you'll become.
I love that, man. I think that's super cool that it all starts with thoughts. And I want to talk about that. But before I move on to that, what are the other two? I know you only covered thoughts for time's sake, but
Yeah,
thoughts,
mastering your words and your actions.
words,
The
and
words are
actions.
simply this. There's two steps, there are two stages to your words. They're a proclamation of who you are,
Yeah.
and they're an instruction for you to live out. Come to find out, the things that I do when I speak out in my life, they're an assurance and my mind hears that, but they're also an instruction for my mind to follow. So when I say, oh, you're so stupid. Why did I do that? I can't believe I blew it again, right? You're giving yourself instruction to live out, not just proclaiming the things that you've done. So mastering your words is simply, do your words align with your thoughts? Do your thoughts align with who you are? I tell my students, if you wanted to have a synopsis of all three of them, what you think you'll say, what you say you'll do, what you do you'll become. What you think you'll say, what you say you'll do, what you'll do you'll become. And the do part, the action part is we literally say this, the hero you. I tell people I'm trying to unleash heroes in hiding. The hero you, what does that person look like walking into whatever? This uncomfortable conversation, this business transaction, this daily work, whatever the thing is you're doing. What does the hero you look like walking into this? Whatever that man or woman looks like, be that person.
Yeah, and that comes from doing all that other important work that you were mentioning, right? The
Yeah,
accomplishments, the
yeah.
I am,
Every
like,
part of it builds on the other.
yeah,
You could skip to the end, and it has a great value. Again, there's personal development programs that only deal with action,
right, right.
right? Bring up your posture and
Yep.
walk with assurance and dynamics and all of this. And that's great. The problem is without the additional work of the stuff up front, you'll be doing that the rest of your life. And that
Yeah.
doesn't look like the freedom that I want my people to walk into.
Yeah. And I think the thoughts part is extremely important because it all starts from here. Like you said, there's so much scientific research that shows it as well. And then
Yeah,
your thoughts are going to become your words become your actions, and those actions then ultimately become your life, right? But those actions
exactly.
have to stem from somewhere, and that stems from thoughts. Um, and do you think that's true when it comes to like external goals of like just kind of talking about what you're going to be doing? And like, are you a big advocate of just like telling other people things and, visualization type
Yeah, yeah.
statements, like just to kind of get it out there? Or like, what's your
Wow,
context when
that's
it comes to
yeah,
like, let's just say it's a financial goal. Like, let's just say, you want to hit like, $1 million net worth or $1 million
yeah,
revenue for your business. Let's just call it that and make it easy. And
yeah.
is that something that like, okay, you're thinking about, you're visualizing, you're taking the actions, but then are you also telling like close friends and close business partners, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do? Like, where does that kind of come into play, if that all that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of built-in accountability of telling
Yeah.
people around you, right? Burning your bridges so that there's no way for you to do that. And I'm sure there's value in it. I just have never done it myself, just to be
Yep.
totally honest. I have a bit of a contrary approach. I've actually talked to a friend about it this last week that I don't let me say this carefully. I'm sure it has value for some people, but I don't use accountability.
Okay.
For me, at the end of the day, if I can't be accountable to myself, then I'm really
For sure.
allowing somebody else to manage my life for me. And there's a disempowering nature to that, I believe. Again, for my own life, there's certain people it works for. But for me, if I need you to help me be me, then now all of a sudden I've given my ownership to my life over to somebody else's decisions, their directions, and their questions. And I'm not willing to do that, because what I tell the people I work with, the more I understand who I am, the less I need you to make up the difference.
Hmm.
The more I'm simply walking in, because I tell them this, Chris, to be totally honest, life mastery is the easiest thing to live in.
Hmm.
When I know who I am, it's simply our goal. Our ultimate goal is you unleashing who you are in every area of your life. It's the easiest thing to do. I don't have to work up for it. I don't have to change for it. I don't have to remember who I am for it. It's literally who I'm created to be lived out. Living apart from life mastery is exhausting.
Yeah.
That's when I have to use habits to make up the difference. I have to have mantras to continually remind myself. I have to use physical exercises to show that I'm a person of confidence, when I can just simply walk in as who I am and make a bigger difference than any of those exercises would.
Yeah.
But as far as goals and values, here's the truth of the matter. I mean, to get to the end of the book, if you will, right? The last few pages, we have what we call 5 areas of life mastery. And it's living spiritually, relationally, vocationally, physically, and financially. I have goals in each of these 5 areas. And what we work with moving towards the end of the life mastery course that I have and into the next phase of life mastery is, now that I understand who I am, the transformational strategies of seeing that man or woman show up. We walk through the 4 pillars of life mastery that we can unpack now or another time. But at the end of it, it's applied to my life in those 5 areas of life mastery. And so what I tell them is, what is the ultimate life that you're created to live? For some, it may be a millionaire, multimillionaire, billionaire. That's great. For some, it may be a philanthropist. For some, it may be a school teacher that's investing in youth and changing the next generation. It doesn't really matter what it is. I don't necessarily, well, we never deal with arbitrary goals, because arbitrary goals are like an arbitrary identity. It's me measuring up to somebody else's ideal that I never will. So even if you get the $1 million, and you are still trying to use it to prove who you are, you've not walked through the life mastery journey. It's a journey of transformation, not change.
Yep.
And so in that place, it's saying, hey, what is the highest level of life that I can live? Say financially, you talked about $1 million. What's the most I believe that I can really accomplish in my life? And come to find out, when you start to hit some of those goals and reach some of those levels, well, now all of a sudden it expands. And that's the beautiful thing about it. The vision I have for myself today is different than 5 years ago, because the man 5 years ago has accomplished the things I'm living today. And so from now, it's going into the next thing. So yeah, for sure. What's the highest level you have? Not just arbitrarily, I want to have a Rolls Royce. I love Bentleys. They're beautiful cars. I don't have one on my list at this moment. Although if I ever had one, it would be, a glorious, beautiful piece of art, right? I love the car.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not shooting for a Bentley. I'm shooting for maximum impact financially and vocationally, which for me is in business ownership. And as I continue to build that, well, then those dreams will start to come out. So yes, have goals. Yes, say what's the highest level, because you can't hit a target you don't see.
Yeah.
But don't hit an arbitrary target because, well, Elon Musk is a billionaire, so I want to be a billionaire.
Sure.
Right. So yeah, for sure, the goals matter, because it gives me something to strive for that's greater than my current level of accomplishment, which brings change and growth and the things that you really want to do, even in the life mastery journey.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that a lot, and I wanted to just hear your approach on that, because some people are about the accountability, some aren't. But I kind of agree with you. Like, if you can't hold yourself accountable to the things that you say you're going to do, then I feel like that's your own kind of internal problem there.
Right.
And
And what I would really want to say is, because what we don't do is try and get people to accomplish things, but unleash who you are.
yep,
And so again, the more I know who I am, the more that guy gets permission to show up. And so I don't need other people to call him out,
mhm.
because I'm living from that place.
So what?
But it works for some people. I'm not trying to say it
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
no
I'm not
doubt.
putting down anybody's method to success.
For sure. And when you're thinking about uh, striving to be who you were created to be, right? And all the great things that you've mentioned, what does that mean for you? And then what what were you like 10, 15 years ago before you kind of started to figure all this out? But I'm kind of curious to know like your answer now, because you're
Yeah.
kind of helping people figure this out for themselves too, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mark 15 years ago was really right on the cusp of creating life mastery. I had, tried the business success, and like I told you, fear of failure, imposter syndrome came along for the ride. They didn't end when the bank account grew.
Hmm.
And so for me and personal development, I tried those things. Again, it brought change, it brought habits, it didn't bring transformation. But I refused to give up. The thing I'd always encourage people is just because you haven't found something that's working yet, don't give up on your belief that there's more.
Hmm.
And so for me, it was figuring out there was more and finding that path towards, life mastery and figuring it out. To be honest, I'm a person of faith, so I
Yeah.
found a lot of those answers and instruction in the Bible, and finding instructions for how to master my thoughts, right? How to speak out words that are bringing affirmation and power within my life, not degrading me, and the actions that I take and those things as well. So it was combining not just the personal development understanding, but the biblical instruction that gave me a final understanding of, okay, I have a created value. If I can see that person lived out, then I can have the life that I'm created for, which is the overarching theme of all of life mastery. Help you understand who you're created to be so you can have the life you're created for. 15 years ago was really starting to figure out, okay, I've got the pieces and parts. How do I put them together for my own life? And then 12, 14, 12 years ago or so, when you start to find something, Chris, that you find is amazing, great experience you've walked through, you want to share it with everybody you cared about. And so that's when I put it into what I consider to be kind of a blueprint to go from hurt to healed, from bound to free. And in that place, started sharing it with other people and started seeing that it was, as much as I could tell, a universal theme of people, even, whether they were highly successful or not successful yet, of believing there's more than the life they're living, but just not knowing what's the steps to get there. I get the philosophies, I get the bumper stickers, I get all those cool phrases that you put on a t-shirt, but what's the ABCs of going from where I'm at to actually making it happen? And so that was that guy. And so for me, it was really developing in myself. Um, Sold our business, did some things to really move forward and vocationally to start to move towards it, and then start to live it out, start to share it with people. COVID came along. So it went from an in-person and a regional conversation and groups and teachings and all of that to go strictly online,
Hmm.
because during COVID, I had no ability to get in front of anybody for 6 or 8 months. Not in groups that mattered and not for these kind of things. Obviously, you went through that as well. We all did. But in that place, that's where it went, on the web. And that's where I started doing YouTube, saying, okay, well, if I want to invest in my community, if this is the message that matters and it matters universally throughout the world, then how do I get it out so anybody anywhere in any nation can receive it, can use it, and can be transformed by it? And that's brought me to today. And today is getting the message out in podcasts like yours. It's looking more internationally rather than nationally, and trying to get the message wherever there are people in the world who need it, which to me, I believe everybody needs it.
Yeah.
Apart from, again, a program like this, not that this is the only program in the world, but it's one I know works for transformation. Apart from that, I haven't seen anybody live out that full-fledged, what I call life mastery life. So I want to make sure I get it in as many hands, get as much resource in front of as many people as possible.
Yeah. I love that you're on just a big mission there. And I love that, for lack of choices, you had to go online, right? But now you're online and you can just impact so many more people. I mean, my podcast
Yeah.
used to just be like strictly in person Charlotte guest and just kind of like other Southeast guests. And like it was hard because I'd have to like drive out of town or like block off time to go meet them in person, right? And then
Yeah.
my guest pool just kept getting like smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the podcast recording studio closed for like, it was a little bit shorter. It was like 2 months here, right? But I was like, well,
Yeah.
I gotta like figure it out. And so I just like started doing virtual recordings. And now I'm like, wait, like people love watching the video virtually and like love that I had this guest. I mean, I've had someone from like New Zealand, I've had someone from
Yeah.
a couple European folks, right? And it's like I would have never like my show's not big enough where I can just fly like, John Gordon to my $2 million studio, So it's just
Yep.
opened up so many opportunities. And let me ask you this, because I'm a person of faith as well. I talk a lot about you had some pillars, right? I talk about like faith, family, fitness, finances,
Yep.
and the American freedoms that we have in this great country as kind of that final F there. But on the faith component, what is your kind of advice when timing doesn't really go your way, whether it's something you're trying to do? Like, for example, I had this goal that I was trying to hit like last month
Yep.
and it just didn't work out. I basically did everything that was in my control and then the answer just didn't go as I wanted. Now I'm kind of like, ah, man, like, well, it's not part of God's timing, and that's easy to say, but sometimes it's hard to believe. And
Yeah.
I do some light coaching as well, like outside of the podcast and my full time job, and like that's the one thing I hear from people is like, how can I just trust in timing when things aren't working out? So,
Mm.
what is
Yeah.
your response there that maybe like ties back into who you are, who you're meant to be, all that stuff?
That's a great question, Chris. So here's the challenge in that I've had in my life, and it is that when timing doesn't work out
Yeah.
in the past, I've not doubted God, I've doubted myself. I guess I didn't hear him right. And I've had huge things. I mean, huge things that didn't work out that led us to be on the verge of bankruptcy.
Mm.
Right. I'm that guy that leaps out. If I believe in something, I believe in 100%, and I'm going to give 100% of me to it. Probably like yourself, I can imagine. And so there are consequences that can hurt, that can sting, that can make you wonder, hey, wow, was I just crazy here? Did I just think it was something cool? Um, but here's the interesting thing. There are a couple of things I would tell you, and for whoever is in this journey and thinking about this or talking about this, here's the truth of the matter. I tell people this, and as a man of faith, I'll just tell it to you straight. I tell people this all the time. I say I pray to God less and I talk to God more. And what I mean is that a lot of times what we don't understand is God trusts us more than we trust ourselves. And so in those times when things don't work out and all of a sudden we're like, man, did I not hear him right? You're questioning the relationship, you're questioning your motives, you're questioning your effort, whatever the thing is. I've been there. I'm not trying to project that on you, but I've been there in my own life. But what I find is the more I understand who I'm created to be, obviously the more I understand who my God is,
Mm.
but the more I trust me again, the more the failures and the mistakes of my past are less of an identifier of who I am. At the end of the day, a lot of times the people I work with that are successful, they're successful not so that they can celebrate, but they're successful because they want to counteract that fear. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not successful, it's going to prove I'm right. I am a failure or whatever the thing is. But the more I know who I am, the more I trust myself and the more I trust the process, which means this every stage and part of my journey is an investment that's being made into me and I'm being made into it. So there's something in you, Chris, that is meant to be invested wherever you're at whatever level of vocation or faith work or whatever the thing is you're doing. And when you're fully invested in that and able to fully accomplish what you're supposed to do there, well, then the next stage will happen. As a person of faith, I know that God's not going to project me into the next thing until I've accomplished the first thing because he knows the weight of the thing to come and he needs me to be prepared for it. So at the end of the day, I know that my obligation is two things: to trust him and to trust me,
Mm.
that I'm good enough for the things I'm walking into. And if it hasn't happened yet, that doesn't mean it won't happen. Many of the things that I believed years ago are happening in the past few years. But we believe that when we hear it, it's a now thing versus a knowledge thing,
Mm.
where he's telling you, hey, this is what you're going to have. That bankruptcy thing was a knowledge thing, not a now thing. I
Mm.
made the mistake of saying, okay, it's now, so I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, and it didn't work out well. There was some investment and some learning and some hurt to be healed from in that, to be totally honest. But in that place, you start to understand. But I'm right. There is this call on me. There is this thing on the inside that's mine. So how can I invest in it now, even though that long reach that I reached out for didn't come to pass? What am I supposed to invest in right now? And when the door is ready to open, it'll open. And I'm not saying it's arbitrary, but there's a preparation that's always done. Preparation's done in stages for the next weight to carry, the next anointing, the next calling, whatever you want to call it. And so when you're ready and fully invested there, when you've accomplished all that you're meant to there, well, then the next assignment will come. You haven't missed it. Whoever we're talking to right now, you haven't missed it. You're not wrong. You don't have to settle for. You just have to understand that you can trust you. If you hear it and it's correct, then that's great. If you don't hear it, then your intent and your heart were pure in this, and it'll be reconciled and brought back to where it needs to be. In either case, I would rather have somebody like myself jump out too early with a passion to do the thing that they wanted to do or believe they were supposed to, versus somebody who held back too long
Mm.
because they were afraid to believe in themselves.
Yeah, I love what you mentioned on maybe you're not ready for the weight of that particular thing yet, whether it's like a business or a new career shift. Maybe God's not finished developing you in that certain phase, right? Like I'm thinking about some
Yeah.
things that have happened in my life that I wanted, 3 years
Yeah.
ago that like now I'm just starting to acquire. And I'm like, if I were thrown in these situations 3 years ago, I would have not had the skills, the confidence, the discipline, all of these things to handle that particular task load or you name
Yeah.
it. Right. So I love that approach because I think about that too. And I like just thinking about the concept of you're kind of exactly where you need to be. And if you know who you are, then that just kind of adds back to that whole itemization that you mentioned at the beginning, where it all goes back to that pillar of like knowing who you are and what you were created to be, and that
Yeah.
trusting that the timing's going to work out. So I just wanted to hear your perspective on that because I think timing is something that holds a lot of people back, especially a lot of young people because they just want it now,
Yeah.
now, now. And I'll put myself in that boat at most times as well, but it's just understanding that there's kind of a bigger plan, bigger picture out there. So
And by the way, the second part of that, the other side of the coin, is there's an investment for you to make right there.
mm,
Here's the interesting thing. I tell people this. I say, you're the answer to the circumstance you're walking into. I say it all the time because it's truth. Again, a man of faith. I see it in the Bible, throughout all of the Bible, that God created people for circumstances to be the answer in. He didn't equip them after they got there. He didn't take them through school when he called them. He simply created them with that on the inside and unleashed them on the outside.
mm.
So whatever circumstance you're in, there's a mission on your life. And so for me, the things I've always had to grow in was looking past this mission for the one I really want. And it doesn't mean that one isn't going to come, because I believe that those desires of your heart are desires of God. But what it does mean is, until I finish my investment here, I'm not ready for there. The more I focus on, I know who I am, identity. I know who I am. And of course, these are the things that I'm supposed to invest here. Your character, your worth, your value, the things that you have, the things that are strengths and gifts and talents for you. And when those are invested at their point of, need and intent, now all of a sudden, the next thing will open up.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. You have a really unique way of just explaining things in a nice format that I think is super easy to understand. So I'm sure the listeners that are diving into today's episode will get a lot out of it. I think sometimes you talk to people and then they go on this like 20-minute point, but you're like, boom, 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 boom. Take away this, right? I love it.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're kind of coming up about 35, 40 minutes. I guess I kind of just want you to leave the listeners with, if you were at a crosswalk and let's not use California because so much traffic there, you might get hit if you're crossing a crosswalk. But let's
I
use
know
let's
that.
let's use good old South Carolina where the roads aren't as busy. You're at a crosswalk, someone's like, "Hey, I recognize you from Chris's podcast, and I'm just trying to figure my life out." And I want to do big things. Like, do you have 30 seconds of some advice, right? And this could be a summary of some things you mentioned. This could be the three steps that you mentioned, but I always like to leave listeners with just some take home, tangible takeaways to close out episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that. So if I had 30 seconds with you, there's a couple of things I would do. If you were on, listening to this podcast, then you've already heard about identity, mastering your thoughts, words, and actions. Implement those.
Yep.
But the thing that I would desire for you to do first and foremost is to bet on yourself one more time. As I alluded to early in our conversation, the one thing I did right as I was looking through personal development, trying to figure out, my faith walk and trying to figure out how to be transformed in my life, there were a multitude of things I tried, a multitude of changes and books and courses and things that I walked through, and each of them had their own value. And none of them brought transformation, so I had to create it. But here's the one thing I got right every time: I was willing to bet on myself one more time. Because the truth of the matter is, the strategy I can give you about identity, the tools and the things I can do in mastering your thoughts, words, and actions, my course, Life Mastery, my book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, none of them will matter if you're not going to bet on yourself one more time. If you're going to be like, well, it didn't work before, so it won't work now. To me, at the end of the day, what I would want to do is set you on fire again to say, maybe I was right. Maybe that man on the inside, maybe that person on the inside is the person I'm supposed to be in. And I just haven't found that right avenue, that right blueprint to get there. If you can hang on to that. If you can bet on yourself one more time, if you can refuse to give up until you see it happen, then all of the tools that we can give you will have a masterful difference in your life. You'll have the transformation you're hoping for. You'll see that person on the outside that you're believing for on the inside.
I love it. I love it. Betting on yourself. That's a big one. And I think thoughts are good if you have the right thoughts, but I think overthinking your steps
Mm,
can sometimes paralyze you a bit because then you never take any action. So I like that approach of
yeah.
betting on yourself. Where can people connect with you? I know you have a lot out of there, course, books, you're making a lot of impact. I'm sure you're involved in social media as well. So I would love for you just
Yeah.
to plug some of those things, and I'll put them in the show notes, but I want people to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I try and be a one-stop shop. So I do have a website. It's freedom-for-life.net. Freedom-for-life.net. Of course, we talked about Life Mastery is out there. You can purchase my book, Life Mastery: Living Life by Design, out there. The book can also be purchased through Amazon. What I also have on the website is a free diagnostics course. I call it a discovery tool. And you just take a quick survey, count up your score at the end, and it'll tell you where you're at in your life mastery journey and what's the next step that you can take. So all of that's on my website, freedom-for-life.net. Um, YouTube channel underscore freedom for life underscore. And then also I am on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. So you can reach me at any of those at some version of Freedom for Life as well.
Cool. And you said the Instagram and Facebook are Freedom for Life.
Yep, Freed for Life on Instagram.
Free for life. Okay. Sounds good, Mark. Well, hey, this was a great episode. I'm glad we got to dive into a lot of the exciting stuff. I'm sure people took a lot of notes because we went over some, not super deep in the weed stuff, but very important stuff that people need to think about. So appreciate you taking the time to be on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for the conversation, Chris. It was awesome.
Absolutely.